So welcome everyone to what is it again? Lesbians in hats talking about business.
Yes, business
Yeah,
lesbians and hats. You can tell that we mean business because we're wearing hats.
that's great. This is our first episode, so this is going to be quite random. And yes, we both have these wonderful hats. Do you want to just say where you got your hat again?
This is a digital nomad hand-me-down hat. So I'm in a groovy little nomad flat, a nomad pad, and one of the girls is headed on off, and she's like, "Hey, I don't need this hat anymore." And I was like, "Heck yeah, let's see if I'm a hat person," because that's kind of the reinvention I go for, really gentle. Like maybe I'll wear a hat and baby steps in your life transformation.
Well, you look great, Sami G. Everyone, this is Sami G. Sami
Hi.
G is currently in Portugal. And how long are you there? I feel like you've been there forever.
You know what? It's been relatively long. I've been here for it's gonna be like a month and a half now, which usually I'm kind of a monther in one place, especially Europe, because Europe's pricey. So it's a continent that I kind of hang out in, but I try to be in the quick lane because my gosh, this when you nomad, we talk about how, oh, you can save more money being a nomad than you do living at home. Not if you're in Europe. No, this is the opposite. You want to be paid in euros, not spending euros.
Good advice there. Hey, this is going to be fun because this is our first episode of Queer Hustle, and I don't know what that means really because I just thought of the idea and I thought that we should talk about as lesbians slash queer women, what it's like to be in business, and also so it's going to be kind of like a first date talk because we haven't really talked about that stuff before. You and me, I don't think.
No, I mostly just, kind of whenever you do stuff, I take the piss. That's kind of our dynamic,
I like
really. I usually throw in a dope meme or a GIF or something like that.
GIF offs. We have GIF offs sometimes.
We do, we do.
If you think you're good at GIFs and you're listening to this video, watching this video, you should take on Sami G because she's kind of a pro at GIF offs. GIF offs.
Yep.
No, that is.
I'm better at GIFs than I am at wearing hats.
Well, you wear a hat well, so it shows that you're very, very good at GIFs. So let's hear your story, Sami G. I'm sure I've heard little bits of it here and there, and I want to hear the whole story. How did you start lesbianing? And I don't mean the actual details of that, but let's hear your kind of where did you come from and where did you go? Where did you come from? Cotton Eye Joe.
Cotton Eye Joe. Yeah, okay. Well, much like Cotton Eye Joe, I come from the country. My lesbian entrepreneur journey really starts with a simple desire to escape Tucson, Arizona. So that has been something that I've been working on for over a decade, really. I started doing some web design. I was doing freelance writing. I was doing a hustle here, hustle there, trying to figure out this online work thing, because I was interested in digital nomading, of course, but my primary focus was to escape the desert. And it took until I was 28. I was having the crisis people have when they're 30. I had that a little 2 years earlier. Because I'm precocious like that when it comes to being neurotic. So precociously neurotic, I was like, hey, I don't want to spend my 30th birthday in Tucson, Arizona. So I decided that I really needed to just buckle down, buddy. So I started really building my business. I took a good online business course with this really cool blue-haired chick, Kimra Luna, if you've heard of her. And I was able to, because I had a full-time job, so I also did 20 hours, 30 hours on top of that, building my online business, which is career coaching, because I was a career coach in Tucson. I've worked at universities, nonprofits, tech boot camps, that type of thing. And I was like, how do I take this online? Because there's really no reason that I need to like sit in the meet space with my clients. I can really, you know, boss people around via the internet. So why be there in person? So I started working on that, and it wasn't the most fiscally responsible decision that I ever made, but after about 4 months in business, I had built up enough of a client base where I was like, you know what? If I go to South America, I can live off this. So I took the leap into nomading. And keep in mind, like, this business, I started doing the digital nomad thing after 4 months, but it actually, like, I had like, 10 years of trying to make online business work until something actually worked. So my first stop was in Brazil. I lived in Sao Paulo for a little bit, and then I've just been traveling ever since. It's been a year and a half since I left Tucson. I've been to nearly 10 countries since then. I have been to 4 continents, and it's been a hell of a ride. And I've been enjoying it thus far. I mean, it did take me a while to like plug into the international online alpha lesbian squad. But you know, eventually I was able to meet you guys, and it's been lovely ever since. I mean, there's a lot of things that's difficult being queer, but the party scene is not one of them. The hustle doesn't need to be the difficult thing. There's enough queer entrepreneurs out there that you can really find your people. You just got to look for them. And they come in random places. That's why being a nomad's real perfect for that.
Cool. Interesting. That you covered a lot of ground there. What were you doing? What were you doing before you started that business? Like, what was your work experience before you started working for yourself?
Okay. Before I started my business, I was working as an employment specialist for an AIDS nonprofit. So I was working with people living with HIV and AIDS, and I was also embedded in a number of other community grants. So I had one grant that I was working with where I was helping at-risk LGBTQ teens. Another one I was working at a homeless drop-in center. So I was working with a lot of, people facing some challenges. And then before that, I was working at a traditional, I guess, kind of tech school, and I was helping web developers and programmers. So it was kind of like going from the haves to the haves to the have-nots. But my experience with career coaching has been pretty diverse. I mainly work with people in tech, but I've worked with all kinds, from runaway teens to, trans women trying to make it in this world to, veterans, who want to learn a new skill. So that's kind of how I came to this thing where I was like, you know what, I got to find a way to take this skill that I'm doing just, in Tucson. I can definitely take it online. Before I did the career coaching, I was actually a university librarian, and I got into career coaching because I made a internship program that did really well. So the director of career services was like, I like the cut of your coat, girl. How about you, join us in this career services department? And I was like, I like the library. And she was like, you'll make 10 grand more working for me. And I was like, sold. So yeah, that's how I ended up doing career coaching and all that good stuff. It all led somehow. It sounds really like consistent, but it really wasn't. There's a lot of periods where I was like, I'm gonna die in Tucson, but you know what? So far, I haven't.
You've not died once. You telling me you've not?
No. Unless this is going to be a very eerie, like, ghostly episode of your podcast, no, I am very much alive. And I'm drinking tea, wearing a hat. And what's more alive than that?
Not a lot, especially if you're, used to be a librarian at some point.
Yeah, that's kind of our thing.
Yeah. So let me ask you, what Well, first of all, what made you think that you could go off and run your own business? Like, what kind of lady balls did you grow in order to like do that? Because most people just don't have, you know, there's like this disconnect between this possible reality future, and it's like, oh, that couldn't happen. I have to stay here and do this. Like, what made you break out of that mold, bust out of Tucson, and get the hell out of there?
Well, first of all, you know, even if you're not an astrology person, I'm going to throw some astrology at you. I guess I always say that I'm a Leo, which is like supposed to be the sign that is very much like can do, take charge, a little self-absorbed. What can I say? We're just born that way. But all of that aside, like I had my first side hustle when I was 16. That's when I started. I like put on like, you know, my older sister's like, you know, office clothes, and I walked around this strip mall, you know, and I was trying to convince small business owners that I could make them a WordPress website. And my sales pitch was about how much money that they would save with a website as opposed to taking an ad in the yellow pages or the newspaper, you know. So I knew from like an early age that like I, you know, want to get the hell out of that town. Like, and I also knew that like I didn't like the idea that whatever I made would be always determined by somebody else. I felt like if I hustled enough, and I'm very like, I have a lot of interests, I'm doing a lot of stuff. I'm a little bit like a monkey. If I'm not properly stimulated, I get into mischief. So I honestly need to have side hustles. I need to have things I'm doing, or else I'd be smoking crack or something. I'd become a statistic. You know, I just get into mischief if I'm bored. So, you know, I've had these side hustles for a long time, and I just felt like it wasn't fair that I would have to be dependent on somebody else being like, that's how much money you can make. Like in when I worked for that tech college, you know, I got a promotion and it was capped. So I would have made more money if I had quit and then been rehired by the company. And I hate that about a lot of companies. There's no incentive to be better, you know, to do better. You know, it's almost like you're incentivized to just kind of like coast. And that doesn't work for me. I'm not going to be able to coast because I'll get bored and it just won't work. So that's kind of like, I guess, kind of the personality that I have. But I also, like, my dad ran a business. My grandpa ran a business. My aunt has a business. You know, so there's just kind of a tradition in my family of people just kind of being like, wow, we're nearly unemployable. Maybe we need to have our own thing going on. Not that I'm unemployable. I'm very employable. I like being part of a team. I just like having creative control. I like doing things my way, and I like being able to experiment with stuff where I'll have ideas. And even working as a consultant for some startups, like, they can't move as fast. And you know what I'm talking about, because you're quick like a little bunny too when you have an idea. And I have all these ideas, and I just want to, like, bam, do the thing. So there's a lot of reasons besides just my lady balls that kind of make it so that entrepreneurship and hustling and, you know, even the nomad thing really works for my personality type. I mean, admittedly, I have those days where I'm just like, I just want to, like, turn on some Netflix and just kind of be curled up like a little burrito in my bed, like anybody else. You know, but there's also a lot of times where I'm like, I want to go. I want to do this thing. I want to talk here. I want to do that. How would I see what the fuck's going on in Morocco? You know, that's just kind of how I am.
I love it. There's so much of that I was like, yep, that makes sense. I'm just like that. They're like, if you're not doing something, you get into mischief. Totally makes sense to me. My dad's also an entrepreneur. He's run his own business since I can remember. He's not actually a particularly good entrepreneur. He created a job for himself, and then he's just like working in a job all the time. And I've been trying to get him to work online for like ever, and it just it's not really happening because he's a naturopath and he just wants to see the next person. And I'm like, we could just make a course, just put it on, you know, like, talk to people online. You can go anywhere. You can go live in whatever. And he's like, no, I just want to live here. And I'm like, okay, I don't understand that at all. But okay. It's like, I could see that he was doing his own thing and could run his own, like increase his own income if he wanted to. And you're right, like it's not fair for someone else to tell you how much you should earn and some corporation to cap your income. If you do it, like, when you do really well at some of these like commission-based jobs or sell whatever, like base plus commission, and they're like, cool, you can earn this, you can earn like this much, you can have this much like commission, but only to this point, and then it's like the 20th of the month and you've already got the most that you can get. So you're like, well, I guess I'm just taking time off, and you can't. You still have to work even though you're not getting money for it. I've had those jobs before. It doesn't make sense.
No, it doesn't. That's why it's better in a lot of cases if you have the personality to have your own business, because you can always figure out something new. And once you keep doing this, more and more people will be like, hey, I know that you know how to do this thing. Like right now, I'm doing a lot of LinkedIn marketing, which I've been using LinkedIn for years to help my career coaching clients and to connect with recruiters and try to promote whatever school or organization I was working with. And I never really thought of it as a business thing, because every time I talk about LinkedIn, people immediately fall asleep. Then Facebook did this thing with their business page algorithm, which, as we all know, tanked the visibility of a lot of pages. Upworthy crashed, all these big media, online media titans have gone like the dinosaurs because of this algorithm change. And a lot of people were like, hey, I know that last time we talked about LinkedIn, I fell asleep, but now my bottom line is really affected. Can you tell me more about this LinkedIn thing? So I strap their eyes open like this and I tell them my story. And that's the thing. That's when you're an entrepreneur, it's crazy especially once you start nomading, you get plugged into things that you would have never have thought. Because a lot of times if your environment is the place where I'm from, I'm a big weirdo. I might as well have elephant ears and a tail, because nobody, honestly is interested in hustling. Nobody wants to do that. There's nobody to bounce ideas off of. There's nobody who's, doing a business or anything. People just, it's like a call center town or something like that. People ain't doing none of that stuff. Mm-hmm. So I didn't have people to bounce ideas off of. I had to wait until I started nomading, until I found people who were like, oh my God, I'm kind of nerdy about that too. Let's just have a think tank about it. So it's good that my environment, there's enough of the nature, so the nurture didn't tamp down my natural instinct to kind of be all over the place. I don't know about you. Did you feel when you were back in your hometown, did you feel like there was anybody else besides, your dad that was hustling, that had their own business? Did you feel like it was an environment for a young Beck in which to blossom?
Absolutely not.
Just like this.
Yeah. And even with my dad having his own business, there was no risk in that business. I mean, whatever, he had many, many years of building up a client base and things like that. So it was a really different kind of thing than I was trying to do, which when I first started, I don't know if I've told you this, I started a kind of Lovesac copycat company in New Zealand, because Lovesac was not making it to New Zealand. And I was like, these beanbags are awesome. Do you know what I'm talking about? It's like those 6
now I know that you mean beanbags. Okay, for a second I was just like, Lovesac? What are you talking about?
It's like
they're beanbags? They're big beanbags?
Yeah, they're filled with foam.
Okay.
And so I was like, I'm not making it to New Zealand, and most things don't, to be fair. We just got Wi-Fi. So it's if I could start a business where I would have someone else that business, but do it in my own way. So I named my knapsack, and I just I flew to China and I imported stuff, all the products, and I got a loan and I started selling the stuff in New Zealand. And I had no fucking idea what I was doing whatsoever. I had very little idea what I'm doing now, but I had no idea. I just learned about domain names that year, I was like, what's happening? How do you? So I tried all this stuff, and that was an okay business. It did all right, but I was on my own the entire time. I just didn't have anyone telling me, like, you're right, to like bounce ideas around with, or to do like a think tank or anything. There was just no one. And so I did everything on my own pretty much until I left New Zealand. So the same situation, you know, I went to Thailand, and I found some entrepreneurs, and they were like, oh, this is cool. This is cool. And I was like, oh my God, like, these are my people. This is awesome. And so I had to get out of New Zealand. It was very, very similar. Even though there are places in New Zealand you can go and talk about entrepreneur stuff, I just didn't really feel like I belonged there, actually. And maybe it was partly true. I hadn't come out yet, or I had just come out. And so I was figuring out all that stuff on top of the business stuff. I was just like, oh crap, like who am I? And like, what am I doing? And it was just like a whole 7 or 8 years of like, you know, up until, or I guess maybe not 7, 5 years until like between the time that I came out until the time that I kind of started getting the hang of business. It was a weird time. I just didn't really know what the fuck was going on.
No, I understand. I feel like every day I learn a little bit more about what I don't know. And it's true, when you're starting out, like, it feels, especially when you're queer, like it feels a little bit weird because you don't have people to look up to, you know. You might, you know, yeah, we have icons, but how many of them are like business icons? Like, name one besides Suze Orman. Like, name a business lesbian that's like mainstream. Like, you really can't. And it makes it like, you can name all the people who, you know, like, maybe, you know, they're like really vegan. You know, you can name some capitalists, you know, or some, you know, people who are anti-capitalist and stuff like that. But like, name someone who's not going to, like, you know, who's going to be interested in this. You really can't. That's why I really like that you're doing Queer Hustle, you know, for all of us who are just trying to, like, get on out there and hustle, because let's be real, queer people still make less in the job market. We still are some of the first people fired. We're still some of the last people hired, you know. So it's almost like, if you're queer, you really should start a business, because it doesn't just help you, it helps everybody else. So you can hire queer people, you know, you can hire trans people, you can hire whoever. Because Lord knows it's difficult. I organized the first job fair for transgender people in Arizona history, and my God, that was a difficult sell, trying to get employers to that one. Because first you got to be like, with what is a transgender person, and then you get to, this is a job fair that I want to do. It's quite difficult. It's not easy, not easy.
So what do you see as like the biggest struggles or problems for queer business owners?
I feel like one of the big things is, it's not just like maybe lack of role models and stuff like that, and it's not even just, you know, the fact that it might be in some places more difficult for you to get business loans or clients. You know, in one of the business groups that I'm in, there's this nice gay guy who's in Russia, and like, once people find out he's gay, like, he loses clients, you know. I think one of the big things is that we as a community don't always support businesses, you know. If you are in maybe like the Latino community or the African American community, you know, they're more likely to support those businesses. I mean, don't get me wrong, gay men will support the fuck out of gay places, but do lesbians? You know, so like, the G has a very firm grasp on community mindedness when it comes to like business ventures, but the rest of the alphabet, you know, may not. And that can be a little bit, I mean, demoralizing. Of course, you can always sell your products and services to straight people. They're lovely. There's nothing wrong with the straight lifestyle. I don't live it, but God bless them, you know. But it's still something where, you know, it feels a little bit demoralizing when you're like, how come, you know, you have like, you know, queer people who are not supporting queer businesses? And that for me makes me sad. Of course, and then the other issues that come with making a business in general. I mean, it can be difficult. You actually have to work at it, which you have to unlearn some things I think that we learn from being an employee or being in school, where a lot of things as an employee and being in, being educated in the modern school systems is that you're supposed to kind of memorize things. You're kind of just like there to run out the clock. When you're a business owner, you're trying to take advantage of every moment that you have so you can work less. So there's no, like, I can't run out the clock for me. Like, if I was going to separate myself as boss and employee, like, no, I'm both. So every moment that I'm like, playing around on, Facebook and not doing something that is a sales activity or a business activity, that's costing me money. Now I'm just like, come on, you lazy slacker, get on the job, but I'm telling myself. So there's a lot of things that can be, I think, challenging. But what do you think is the most challenging thing for queer entrepreneurs? I know I'm the interviewee, but I want to turn this around on you.
I like it. Let's, we don't know what we're doing on this thing anyway, so we might as well make it a two-way conversation. Well, what I was going to say is that, there are some challenges, but actually, because I'm a silver lining kind of girl, I think that we have a lot of skills that are unique and they can really serve us in being an entrepreneur. And one of those is the ability to, like you said, like, for example, when you come out, for a lot of us, it's like maybe not a negative experience, but maybe a negative experience. We're on our own, we feel lonely, we're like, what the fuck have I done? This is terrible. And we realize that we have to walk, for a little bit, we got to walk this path alone. It's like you gotta let go what your family thinks. You gotta, maybe if you've got a weird aunt that's not down, you have to be like, hey, like, that's cool. We don't have to talk ever again. That's fine. Like, whatever. And so we have to make that decision where we cut people off and we just do our thing. And I think that it's really similar in being an entrepreneur. A lot of times people don't understand what we want and what we're doing and what we're working towards. And so, they might be like, that's a stupid idea. What the fuck's wrong with you? You should just get a job like a normal person. And you're like, no, like, I'm telling you, I have a different feeling about this. I'm doing this differently. And you walk that path alone in the same way that you walked the queer path alone. And I think that those experiences, for me at least, were really similar. And I had to think to myself, well, everyone else can get fucked because I'm going to do this. And I know that this is what I have to do. And I know that this is what I want. And I'm going to give up what I have to give up to have this thing that I want. And I think that we, as queer, a unique experience of that's the one thing I thought. I'm sure there's other unique things. But really following our own path is quite a good and useful skill as an entrepreneur.
No, that's completely true, and it gives you that thicker skin. You're better at doling out the fucks that you give. That's super true. Can we cuss in this interview? Because I've been cussing up a storm. You can edit those out later if you need to.
Swearing, it's not good for the kids.
No, it's terrible for these non-existent kids that are going to watch this. Why don't I think about the children? Oh, well.
It's fine. I think it's okay. Otherwise, there's just going to be a lot of edited out beeps out of here, but I think we're good.
Oh, okay. Well, you can just put one of them like black bars over my mouth every time I cuss. Try to work on that. I don't know.
Let me ask you another question. What, I guess, like, hard times. Let's talk about the reality of being a queer business owner. What are the warnings that you would have? So I'm going to ask you for the other side of this after, so like advice.
Mm-hmm.
But what are the warnings and maybe things to watch out for as a queer business owner?
One thing is a warning, at least in my case. I don't know about other people, but I felt like when as a queer business owner, when I started this whole thing, I had a lot of weird I guess, like, because I don't come from, like, Tucson's not, like, a successful city, if you will. And I was working for a very progressive nonprofit. So I felt like when I started my entrepreneurial journey, I had a lot of pushback from people who were like, why isn't this completely accessible? Why isn't this completely free? Why are you, you know, becoming a capitalist pig? And first of all, that was one, kind of distressing, and two, like, it took a while before I realized how hypocritical it was, because among, you know, a lot of, like, social justice circles, there's a lot of things about unpaid emotional labor. However, people don't give a damn about your unpaid intellectual labor. So I had to really kind of wrap myself around the sort of guilt that can kind of happen when you become successful. Like, think about it. Think about the guilt that happens when you get everything you want. At this point in my life, I have gotten everything that I want. Of course, my dating life could be better, but, you know, I'm a silver lining, you know, but essentially I've gotten everything that I want, you know, and it makes you feel kind of guilty because there's many people in the community who do not, you know, so even if you're checking your privilege and blah, 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 you can still have this weird feeling of like it's survivor's guilt or whatever. So for me, that's been a challenge, which is not good for my money mindset, as the hip life coaches say, you know, because I don't think that it's necessarily money makes you a bad person. I feel like money or more resources or pretty much anything, once you're kind of a crappy person, you're just always going to be a crappy person, and whatever happens to you will amplify it. But it took a while for me to understand that you know, just because I'm no longer working for a nonprofit doesn't mean that I've, like, sold out and I'm going to start putting out cigarettes on, like, you know, babies' faces or something like that, or whatever, just start dumping oil into a river just for kicks. I'm not even in the oil industry, but you know, you have that mindset sometimes when you work for a groovy nonprofit. You're just like, well, I just start being a slaver. No, you're not. You can still be a great person. It's just now you're not working in an underpaid situation, where I definitely was. I was working for the nonprofit industrial complex, where I had a lot of, like, there's a lot of guilt used to make especially us female employees do more freaking volunteering. Like, nonprofits are the only industry where your employer will ask you to volunteer and everybody will give you crap if you're like, you're not going to pay me for doing my job. Oh, okay, this is a thing. So I had that, and I'm still working through that, and I still, you know, every once in a while have some pushback. But the thing was, when I was giving out free career coaching, a lot of people who were not direct clients of mine never took me up on this. It's only when I started charging anything that people have started to see that it was valuable. When I was trying to, like, put out into the community all this great information that I had, trying to use my connections, doing all this stuff, like, I did not get as many takers. The second I put a price tag on everything I did, second is people be like, oh, you write resumes. Now that you're not doing it for free, now I know that these are good resumes. No, the quality didn't change. The quality didn't change, but that's just a perception, and it's a weird mindset thing that I've had to work with. I know that was a very rambling question that's deeply personal and probably doesn't apply to other entrepreneurs who didn't work for a nonprofit, but, you know, you're asking me questions, so I'm giving you a me answer.
I sure am. Thanks. That was interesting.
I can tell by your voice.
That was so interesting. It was. And, you know, like, that's a whole other topic, right? Is, like, charging for stuff and how much you should charge, and money mindset and all that stuff is just, like, this crazy big part of being an entrepreneur. And honestly, it's a part that most people have, you know, most people's money mindset and stuff is screwed up in some way because of these experiences that we've had, because of, like, whatever flavor of weirdo past that you had that's fucked up your money mindset. And it's not wrong, it's not bad. Most people are making whatever money, it's like, okay, they can survive. But, like, you really have to overcome something, whichever whichever thing you will help you. You have to overcome that in order to make more money than you actually need to survive. Because that survival level, it's like, if you needed to make $1,000, you would make $1,000, right? You just find a way to make it. But like, it's because you need to make that much. That's how much you make. But if you needed to make 20, you'd make $20,000. You'd have to. So it's like, what's the, people have this like really, it's kind of like looking at the ground. It's like this view of their world and their money. It's like, okay, here's how much I need. But it's like, actually, how big can you, I did a live on this last night, so I've got a rant ready. Like, how big can you think? Like, how actually you actually think? And people are like, well, I would like to own a business that makes, $50,000 a year. And it's like, okay, cool. But like, what if your brain has to be able to, this is such a rant, but I love it. I'm getting into it.
Get into it.
I will, yes. So what, like, you have to, if you're going to make $1 million, your brain then has to kind of like address, okay, if I was making $1 million, I can't do what I'm doing now because I'm selling $100 products. How can I make $1 million? And so then you have to think, okay, I would have to sell this many people at this price and this thing, and your brain starts to be able to handle that number. And it can't handle that number if you can't even like imagine that thing to begin with. So I'm kind of going along there, riffing on what you just said about having a money mindset and feeling guilty or feeling like you can only make this much or whatever. I feel like I've gone off topic.
No, I feel like this is actually a good topic because it brings me to something that I've noticed with especially a lot of the women that I've worked with as a career coach, where they almost try to shrink themselves in a way where they're like, oh, I don't need that. Even though, let's be real, a lot of times we put these like piddly numbers that, oh, I could make an extra $400 a month, except when you think about it, most of us are not saving for retirement. Most of us, especially if we're queer, we might not have kids that they can be our security net, where as long as you don't beat your kids, they got to take you in when you're older. We don't have that. So, and a lot of us are not saving for retirement. We're not saving for a rainy day. Like, there's a lot of queer people that don't even have enough of a cushion if they lose their job to be able to survive with their bills for 3 months. So there's a lot of people who are just like, oh, but that's more than my fair share. It's like, do you even know what your fair share is? Do you even know when you're thinking for the future how much you need? Like, when you talk about $1 million, they say that is like the minimum of what you should be trying to save throughout your whole life to try to pay for retirement, at least in America, which is going to be kind of like the Hunger Games, and we're probably going to be eating the elderly soon. But, like, if there's not a security net in the country where you're from, then you have to think about that for yourself. So you have a lot of these people who are like, oh, these entrepreneurs want to have so much money. It's like, no, I want to have a retirement fund. I want to have savings. I want to make sure that when I am older, I will be in like a nice nursing home. I'll be in like one of them Dutch ones where like it looks like a small town, like that's what I'm going for. I'm not going to like be greedy to take over the world. I'm not going to have like a volcano somewhere that's shaped like a skull that I can plot evil schemes into. Though now that I say that, that sounds really badass. And I kind of do now want a skull-shaped volcano. But still, I digress. We have this stuff because we think that, oh, but that's going to be, oh, that's too much for me. Oh, I won't take that last piece of pizza. Oh, I won't go for that promotion. Oh, that person's making me uncomfortable. I won't say anything. It's like, girlfriend, squirrel friend, non-binary friend, you need to step your freaking game up and take up more space in your life, in your world, and all that. And if that makes you a bitch, if that makes you selfish for demanding that you should have some freaking standards, that you should have a decent standard of living, that you should be able to like know that if you need to take a vacation, you can. If you get sick or you break your leg and you can't work for a couple of months, you're gonna be okay. Mm-hmm. That's not greedy. That's not selfish. And there's a lot of people who have that in their head. that, oh, I can't make this much because that'll make me a bad person, or, oh, that person's so flashy, she brought a Chanel purse. It's like, let her buy that purse, let her do whatever. Maybe instead of judging that person, you should look back at yourself and think, maybe I should start saving for retirement. Maybe I should fix getting a new pair of jeans because I got like a hole in my butt and people can see my butt. No, like, sorry, I know now I'm going on a tangent, but I see too many, like, even female entrepreneurs who just like try to shrink themselves up and act like they're like, do this faux humble shit, which is not going to earn them any favors. It's not going to make them friends. It's just going to make them a doormat. And people don't actually like doormats. They just think they're convenient and they can wipe their feet on them as they go somewhere else. That's my soapbox. Dropping my mic.
That one, I really liked that. That was great. Why do
Thank you.
Why do women do that? I feel like I wasn't even going to go down this road, but like, fuck it, we're here. Why do women think ourselves, to be so, to take up, I like what you said about space. We're like, oh, I'll just only take up this much. I'm so sorry. Am I being an inconvenience? Oh, like, does no one else want to do this job? Okay, I'll do it. It's like, why do we do this? Do you have any ideas?
You know, I actually read this interesting article about the sort of unpaid volunteering that happens, or job responsibilities that don't lead to promotion. And women are more likely to do the shit like organize like the Christmas party, or, you know, do inventory in the supply closet, stuff that is not going to impress anybody on a performance interview, but it's going to, you know, make the office a better place. And they actually did studies where they had men and women, and men, on the whole, if there are women around, they will not volunteer for this shit. They just will not. When there's just women, all the women will take turns doing this thankless bullshit. But if it's just men, weirdly enough, the same men are the ones who get put into this like thankless tasks. So I think as women, it's just so expected that we're supposed to like lay down and just like, if there's like a mud puddle, women should just lay down over it so the rest of the community can walk over us so their feet don't get wet. Like, we are literally trained for this, which I feel like, I'm going to go back to your question on what makes, I think, lesbians and queer women a little bit more unique and have an advantage, is that oftentimes we've had to come to the fact that our very existence is inconvenient, because women are supposed to be, let's be real, it's 2018, but we all know that there's a lot of places, well, first world, third world, whatever, where women are expected to be freaking easy bake baby ovens. And the second that a woman says, no, none of the D for me, sir, that is the day when she becomes inconvenient. And once you have to take that very step of being like, I guess I'm going to be taking up space, I guess I'm going to be doing this thing, I guess I'm just going to be lesbianing it up, then you actually take that very powerful step to be like, I'm here, I'm taking up space, I'm queer, I'm going to start a business. It all, you know, lesbianism is just a slippery slope to entrepreneurship, I think, if we want to really follow that rabbit hole down. There you go. That's my quote for the day. But no, and I think it's just like a socialization thing. And I think the more that we can be aware of that fact, and I've coached women on being like, don't volunteer for this shit, you know, and it can make it a little bit dicey sometimes socially. Like, I stopped volunteering for stuff at that nonprofit job, and I know that there are some people who are like, you're not a team player. It's like, no, I am not a team player if my team is expecting me to be the serf. No, especially if it's a groovy nonprofit and everybody's supposed to be checking their privilege. What about those dudes over there who ain't doing diddly squat unless it's on the clock? I'm going to be like those dudes. Sorry, Charlie. That's how this is. So, I don't know. I think that's, that's one of them things. And it's something that I think for women, entrepreneurs, non-binary people, anybody who ever identifies as female, you got to understand that you have to fight that sort of BS that they put into your brain the second that they put like a pink bow on you, pierced your ears, and gave you a dolly and said, here you go, you're second class for the rest of your life. I know, I'm a bit of a rabble rouser, aren't I?
I'm loving this. I feel like we should do like another interview, like where we both just, I do. Yeah, but I do think, you know, like, this stuff that you're saying, it doesn't necessarily have to be like a revolution. Okay, I won't use the word revolution because I think it should be a revolution. But I don't think we need to start like hating on people and causing trouble and being like, that guy's not doing anything. Like this.
Can we at least throw one egg at a man? Can we at least throw an egg or a potato? It can be a soft potato. It doesn't need to be a raw one. It can be gently baked.
A gently baked potato. We can throw one. But like,
okay.
I really, because there's such this this whole question about, or not a question, but this stereotype of feminism and how we're all like angry and punching men and we just hate. And I'm actually writing a song about, you know, like about, it's like, dear men, you know, I don't hate you kind of thing, but you know, pointing out some of the obvious points that we're making in this recording. I don't know. I feel like we shouldn't be, it's not this whole thing about being angry all the time, but it is a thing about, this is my space. It's like you know what it's like? You're going to appreciate this. It's like the armrests in the airplane, you know? It's like, okay, this is my fucking thing. I don't have to like shrink and be like this, now I have to do the whole flight like this. These are my fucking armrests and I'm going to own it. And don't man spread across into my area. This is my area, you know? Like, I'm not pushing out into your area. You know, we don't need to own all the seats. I just want to own this seat and this armrest. Like maybe just one, because you know there's that confusing, like if you're in the middle, but not going too far along the metaphor. But do you know what I mean? I feel like let's just own our space. Own your space.
Yeah. Well, and some people take that as revolutionary if they're kind of accustomed to always having people cater to them. You know, and it can be difficult, you know, and it doesn't need to be like an angry thing because Lord knows, like, I don't hate men. I'm more apathetic, to be honest, which men don't like to hear that. They'd rather you be angry because at least that's an emotion. I'm more like, because I see, like, you know, men, it's kind of like when people have a pet bird. Like, I get it. They talk to you. You can feed them peanuts. You know, that's how I see keeping a man, having a boyfriend. You know, you can talk to him. You can feed him peanuts. Intellectually, I get it. But I don't want to own a bird. I don't want to keep a man. And it doesn't mean that I hate birds or men, but I'm aware that, you know, they have sharp little talons. No, that's just the bird. But still, you know, I get that. I get that I don't want none of that. But I don't object to people who do. You know, have your bird and your man bird, whatever you're doing, lady, have a good time with it.
There's a collection of metaphors in this interview.
There's a lot. Yeah, there's a lot that we're running with.
Look, so we are heading towards the end of our time together on this interview. What final advice do you have for a queer woman, you know, who's thinking, yeah, I fucking know what you're saying. This is good, and I don't really love my job that much, and I think I should start a business or something like that. Like, what? How do I? Where do I?
Okay. My biggest piece of advice, and this is kind of like, you could even call this my business catchphrase. This is kind of like my mantra, my guiding principle, is that action creates mastery. You know, a lot of times we're afraid to do things because we're not experts at it. We haven't mastered it. However, you never actually do a damn thing. You never like get good at a thing until you do it. So for any like queer woman entrepreneur, every time you take action, whether it's like you can only, and this needs to be consistent. It can't be like, you know, every 4 months you dick around and send a sales tweet or something like this. It should be consistent action that you take, even if it's just 15 minutes a day, even if it's just a little thing, to just master your craft. Start getting yourself out there, even if you fail, because sometimes, like, you're not actually failing. You think you did. Like when I did my first online course, it flopped. Like I released it to the sound of crickets. And I was like, God damn it. The thing is that during that time when I was promoting it, I was creating it, I had people watching my social media. I had people who were aware of me. They weren't ready to buy from me then, but 6 months later they did. And they were like, yeah, I remember when you did that course. And, you know, it wasn't the right time. I've learned that career courses are best launched in September. People don't want to think about jobs in June. June's a bad month to do that because they want to go on holiday. But people were like, yeah, I wasn't ready then, but like I kept following you. That's how I, you know, when you were promoting and doing all that stuff, that's how I found you. And if I hadn't taken that consistent action when nobody was watching, when the only person who liked my post was my mom, when like my branding looked like crap, when like I was having tech failures and stuff and I didn't know which way to point my camera and like all my lighting made me look like the crypt keeper because I hadn't figured out direct light, you know, that was where people were watching that stuff. People were going for it. And until I learned how to do that, until I actually failed, and this might be my learning style, I need to, you know, like I literally, like I need to touch the stove a couple of times to know it's hot. Not in real life, I have a firm grasp on not touching hot things, but metaphorically speaking, like I learned by doing. So every time you take consistent action, you're more likely to succeed. And you actually go beyond what most people actually do, because most of these online groups, in-person mixers, you know, probably even if there's going to be like a conference on the moon or something, most of the people who will be there will never do it. They'll say, oh, in 3 years I'll do it. You know, you don't see from them again. But if you keep doing it and you take that consistent action, you will succeed. You will go farther than you thought, because action really does create mastery. And if you wait around all day worrying that it's perfect or that you don't have an audience or yada, 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 that just guarantees that you won't have an audience, that you won't be good at it. You kind of just got to fail and fuck around. The good thing is that you can flounder for a good long while on social media without people really noticing. And then by the time they notice you, you have a much better branding and understanding of what you're doing.
It's true.
Quite nice.
Yeah, everyone thinks that it's the first Facebook thing or like tweet or the first blog post that they publish is like this massive deal. Do you remember when you published your first blog post? I remember mine. And I ran in and showed someone it. And I was like, I'm going to push publish now. And they were like, wow, it's really good. It was useless. It was a shitty post. And I just like... And like nothing fucking happened. There was like 15 people that ever visited it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I love that. Okay, so where can, you know, all these people that have obviously fallen in love with you because of your hat and your etc. Where can they visit and find and stalk you?
Okay. Where they can find me is at my business page is Sami Gardner. You can find it on Facebook, SAMI, because my mother's an individual. So another thing that you can find me at is samigardner.com. That's my main page. But my businesses are careerkickstartacademy.com, where you can find my courses, find out more about working with me as a career coach, which frankly, as somebody who graduated with a history degree and a library science degree, the fact that I've been able to find a job and create a lucrative career means that I don't just talk, I walked it. And then if you're interested in my LinkedIn marketing because your business has just been screwed over by Facebook's algorithm, you can find out more about that at linked-mastery.com. I also have a Facebook group for that called LinkedIn Mastery for Entrepreneurs with Sami Gardner. And in case you're wondering why I have a Facebook group about LinkedIn marketing, is because my marketing is targeted towards Facebook-based entrepreneurs that try to smuggle them over to the LinkedIn side. So that's all my deets. And I had a great conversation, Beck. This was fun.
It was fun. If you're listening to this, those links are going to be somewhere around this video because there were a lot of them and you might not have caught all of them. But
no, and I'll make sure in comments of things, if Beck doesn't put in the notes, I'll be there creeping up behind, dropping my links. hopefully not like this, because this makes me seem like a creepy dinosaur. I was trying to show typing, but instead I just look like a perverted dinosaur in a hat.
All right, Sami, as usual, it's a great pleasure to speak with you. Thanks for being on the Queer Hustle show.